"Don't touch my tray, boy." The words hit harder than the sound of the slap that followed. Plates clattered. A gasp rippled through the diner. And there, under the blinding white lights and the smell of burnt coffee, a 12-year-old black boy named Miguel stood frozen, a red handprint blooming across his cheek. Derek Collins, 17, varsity jacket, son of the town's most respected businessman, smirked like he'd just won something. His friends burst into laughter, loud and cruel, echoing off the tiled walls. Miguel didn't cry. He didn't move. He just stared back, eyes wide, steady, silent. That silence made Derek uneasy. "Bullies expect tears, not calm." "Come on," Derek sneered, nudging his friend. "He's used to it." "Probably happens at home, too." More laughter. But Miguel's gaze didn't break. Somewhere deep inside, a slow burn began, a quiet promise he didn't yet understand himself. At the corner booth, the waitress froze mid-pour. The cook peeked through the serving window. No one said a word. The diner, a place that usually buzzed with gossip and clinking cups, went dead quiet except for the slow drip of coffee from the pot. Miguel slowly picked up his tray. One cracked plate. A few fries spilled onto the floor. He bent down, gathered them with shaking hands, and whispered softly, almost too low to hear. "It's okay." But it wasn't. Derek turned away, laughing again, showing off his power. The others followed, tossing dollar bills on the table like confetti. The doorbell jingled as they left, their laughter fading into the cold afternoon. Outside, Miguel stood by the window watching them go. His reflection in the glass looked smaller than he felt. The bruise on his cheek stung, but the shame burned deeper. People inside started talking again, pretending nothing happened. That's when he noticed it. Under the table near the booth where the slap happened, a tiny, blinking red light. A camera, hidden, tucked behind the napkin holder. Miguel's heart thudded. He didn't know who put it there. But he knew one thing. The slap was recorded. He glanced around. No one seemed to notice. He turned and quietly walked out of the diner, his small hand clutching the strap of his worn-out backpack. The town was small, the kind where everyone knew everyone, and everyone knew to stay quiet when the Collins family was involved. Derek's father owned half the shops on Main Street. He sponsored the school, the sheriff's charity drive, even the church choir uniforms. No one crossed him, but Miguel didn't belong to that world. His shoes had holes, his shirts were hand-me-downs, and his mother worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. Most people looked at him with pity. Derek looked at him with disgust. As Miguel walked home, clouds gathered over the street. Thunder rolled in the distance. He could still feel the echo of the slap in his bones, yet his steps grew slower, calmer, almost deliberate. He reached his small house at the edge of town, a fading porch, peeling paint, an old sedan parked crooked in the driveway. His mother wasn't home yet. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his reflection in the cracked phone screen. The red mark was still there. He lifted the phone and whispered, "Record." Then he spoke, softly, like he was afraid someone might hear. "My name is Miguel Torino. Today, Derek Collins slapped me in front of everyone at Miller's Diner. Nobody stopped him, but I think someone saw." He stopped the recording, stared at the file for a moment, then tucked the phone away. Through the rain-streaked window, a black car slowed in front of the house. The engine purred, low and steady. The tinted window rolled down halfway. A man in a dark suit sat inside, watching quietly. Miguel didn't notice, but the man did. He saw the mark, the boy's face, the diner name printed faintly on the takeout bag. He made a call. His voice was calm, deep, deliberate. "We found him." The rain picked up. The car drove off, its headlights cutting through the storm. Inside, Miguel stood, turned off the kitchen light, and whispered to himself, "Tomorrow's gonna be different." He didn't know how right he was, because that single slap, the one meant to humiliate him, had just set off a chain of events that would shake the entire town. And soon, Derek Collins would learn that Miguel's father wasn't just any man. He was the man who decided who walked free and who disappeared. And for the first time, the town's golden boy was about to find out what power really looked like. "Say something, boy." The voice cut through the diner's silence like a knife. But Miguel said nothing. His lips trembled, his eyes fixed on the cracked floor beneath his sneakers. The red mark on his cheek still burned where Derek had slapped him minutes ago. Everyone had seen it. No one had stopped it. Now that silence was heavier than the slap itself. At the far end of the diner, forks scraped plates. A coffee pot hissed. But every sound felt distant, muted, like the whole world had turned its back. Derek leaned closer, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You gonna just stand there? Or you gonna cry like your daddy would've?" Miguel's fists clenched, but he didn't lift his head. Not because he was weak, but because he was thinking. Behind those quiet eyes, something sharp was forming, something dangerous. The waitress, an older black woman named Martha, glanced over from the counter. Her hands trembled as she poured coffee for a man pretending to read his newspaper. She wanted to say something. But she'd lived in this town long enough to know silence was safer. Outside, rain drizzled against the diner windows. Neon reflections wavered across Miguel's bruised face. He finally whispered, barely loud enough for Derek to hear, "My dad's not dead." Derek blinked. "What'd you say?" Miguel looked up slowly. His eyes were cold now, steady. "I said, my dad's not dead." The smirk on Derek's face faltered for just a second, but pride snapped it back in place. "Yeah, then where's he been hiding, huh? Cleaning floors somewhere?" Miguel said nothing, just stared. And for the first time, Derek looked uncertain. Then, from the corner booth, a man cleared his throat. A tall figure, dressed in a long black coat, stood and dropped a few bills on the table. His movements were calm, too calm. His eyes, hidden behind dark glasses, flicked briefly toward Miguel. Then, without a word, he walked out into the rain. No one noticed the way Derek's laughter faded as the man passed by. No one noticed the waitress's hand freeze mid-pour when she recognized the tattoo on his wrist. Miguel did, and his heart pounded. He'd seen that tattoo before, on the picture his mother kept hidden in a drawer. The one of his father. The diner door swung shut, and the man disappeared into the storm. Derek shoved Miguel's shoulder. "Hey, I'm talking to you!" But Miguel barely felt it. His eyes were on the window, watching the black car outside pull away. Inside that car, the man raised a phone to his ear. "Found him," he said. Back inside, Derek was still running his mouth, trying to pull the attention back to himself. But the crowd wasn't laughing anymore. Something in the air had changed. The power in the room shifted. Miguel turned to leave. "Where you think you're going?" Derek scoffed, blocking the door. "You don't just walk away from me." Miguel looked up at him, calm again. "You're right." He leaned in slightly. "You walk away from me?" The words were soft. But they hit Derek like thunder. Before Derek could respond, the waitress spoke up. Her voice cracked as she said, "Let the boy go." Everyone froze. It was the first time anyone had spoken against Derek in public. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were firm. "You heard me? Let him go." Derek hesitated, glancing around. No one moved. No one laughed. Miguel stepped past him, pushing open the door. Rain splashed across his shoes. He didn't look back. Behind him, silence swallowed the diner whole again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of shame. It was fear, because everyone knew the truth now. That man in the coat wasn't just some stranger, and the quiet boy Derek slapped wasn't just anyone's son. As the rain poured harder, a car engine roared somewhere in the distance. Miguel didn't know what would happen next, but he could feel it. The world was shifting. Tonight, the silence had spoken, and it would never stay quiet again. "Don't touch that plate, boy." The voice snapped across the quiet kitchen like a whip. Miguel froze, his small hands hovering over the sink full of dirty dishes. Steam curled up, fogging the cracked window above the counter. Derek's reflection glared back from behind him, arms crossed, smirk sharp enough to cut. Miguel turned slowly, his heart thudding. Didn't ask what you were just doing, Derek cut in. You hear me say clean, you clean. You hear me say stop, you stop. He stepped closer, boots heavy against the tile. Each step made Miguel shrink a little more, not just in body, but in spirit. Derek liked this part. The control, the silence, the way everyone else in the diner pretended not to see. And today he wanted to remind the boy exactly where he stood. He picked up a dripping plate, wiped it once with a rag, then threw it hard into the sink. The crash made Miguel flinch. You think this place runs itself? Derek said, his tone rising. You think I pay you to stand around and dream? Miguel's eyes darted toward the small clock above the door. It was 9:03. His father had said he'd come for him tonight. But right now it felt like the night would never end. Martha, the older waitress, peeked in from the hallway. Derek, maybe that's enough, he snapped without turning. Get back to work, Martha. Her lips tightened. She knew better. She walked off quietly, eyes full of pity she couldn't afford to show. Derek leaned close to Miguel, his breath thick with coffee and cigarettes. You know what your problem is, kid? You think you're special. You think because your skin's dark and your eyes look sad, the world owes you something. Miguel didn't speak. He couldn't. His voice felt locked somewhere deep behind his chest. So here's a lesson, Derek whispered, lowering his voice. The world doesn't care about your pain. It just wants you quiet. Useful. Then came the sound, soft at first, then sharp, the back of Derek's hand meeting Miguel's cheek again. The slap echoed off the walls like a cruel memory repeating itself. For a moment, time froze. Miguel didn't cry. Didn't move. He just breathed, slowly, shakily, but inside him, something was burning. Derek stepped back, laughing under his breath. There it is, that look. The same one your old man had before he ran off. Miguel's jaw tightened. He wanted to shout, to fight, to say that his father hadn't run. But before he could, Derek tossed the rag aside and turned away. Finish up and lock the door when you're done, he said, walking out into the dining area. Don't forget. You're lucky to even be here. Miguel stared at the sink, at his reflection rippling in the water. Lucky. That word tasted bitter. He grabbed the next plate and scrubbed, harder this time. Each stroke matched his heartbeat. In the hallway, Martha lingered, pretending to sort receipts. She whispered, You okay, baby? Miguel didn't answer. But when she reached out, he gave the faintest nod. Don't let that man break you, she murmured. He only wins when you stay quiet. He looked up, eyes wet but fierce. I'm not staying quiet. Outside, thunder rolled low across the horizon. Derek's laughter drifted from the front of the diner, cocky, careless, cruel, but the clock on the wall kept ticking, steady and sure. Out 10, Miguel dried his hands and turned toward the back door. His cheek still burned, but his mind was sharper than ever. Martha called out, Where you going? He didn't stop walking. To end the pattern, the door creaked open, wind rushing in from the storm. Because some lessons weren't meant to be learned, they were meant to be broken, and tonight, the boy who was taught to stay silent was about to make the world listen. Did you hear what his father does? The whisper cut through the cafeteria noise like a knife. Forks paused midair. Chairs creaked as curious faces turned toward the smallest table in the room, the one where Miguel sat alone. He kept his head down, pretending to scroll through his phone. But the laughter nearby made his fingers tremble just slightly. Across the room, Derek leaned back in his chair, tossing a grape into his mouth. Yeah, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. I heard his dad's some kind of janitor. Or maybe he just ran off like the rest of his family. A few kids laughed. the kind of laughter that hides fear behind cruelty. Miguel didn't look up. He couldn't afford to. Not yet. Derek grinned wider, enjoying the attention. You'd think with a last name like Torino he'd be washing cars or something. Not dishes. That one got louder laughs. Even the teacher's aide by the door looked away. No one ever wanted to stand between Derek Thompson and his next target. Miguel's phone buzzed on the table. A message from his dad. Stay calm. Always stay calm. The world listens when you're quiet first. Miguel swallowed hard, typing back, trying. But as Derek stood walking toward him with that mocking smirk, the cafeteria seemed to shrink. Well, well, if it isn't the little dishwasher, Derek said, slapping his tray down beside Miguel's. What you eating, huh? Charity food? Miguel stared at the slice of bread on his tray. It's just lunch, Derek. Oh, come on, don't be shy. Derek reached for Miguel's milk carton, twisted it open, and poured it slowly over Miguel's sandwich. The white stream spread across the tray like spilled paint. The cafeteria erupted in laughter. Someone recorded it on their phone. Miguel didn't move, didn't speak. His silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was focus. He reached under the table and quietly tapped the side of his phone. Recording started. Derek leaned closer, his voice low. You're not going to tell anyone, are you? 'Cause last time you did, remember what happened? Miguel's hand tightened around the edge of the table. His voice was calm, almost too calm. You should be careful, Derek. You never know who's listening. The words hung in the air like smoke. Derek blinked, caught off guard. What's that supposed to mean? Miguel looked up for the first time. His eyes were steady, dark, unreadable. Nothing, he said softly, just a whisper. Derek forced a laugh, but something in Miguel's tone unsettled him. He straightened his collar, brushing it off. Man, whatever. You're still nothing. He turned back to his group, tossing over his shoulder. Tell your dad to come clean my shoes next time he's mopping floors. Miguel didn't flinch. He simply watched Derek walk away. And then, with quiet precision, slid his phone back into his pocket. Across the cafeteria, Martha, the same waitress who'd seen the diner slap, had been hired part-time at the school. She watched from the counter, recognizing the look in Miguel's eyes. That still, waiting storm. Later that day, as the halls emptied, Miguel walked alone to his locker. A few crumpled papers fell out. Loser, dish boy, go back to the diner. He sighed, picking them up one by one. Behind him, two teachers whispered near the water fountain. His father's... What, Italian? Yeah, some kind of restaurant guy, I think. Strange. I heard he drives a black car with tinted windows. Miguel caught that last part and smiled faintly. A whisper. That's all it took. When he reached home that evening, the kitchen smelled of garlic and rain. His father, Vincenzo Torino, was seated at the table, suit jacket draped over the chair, cufflinks gleaming under the dim light. He looked up as Miguel entered, his expression calm but heavy with meaning. Rough day? Vincenzo asked quietly. Miguel sat across from him. They talk. About you. Vincenzo nodded once. Let them talk. Miguel's voice dropped. One of them hit me again. The silence after that was thick. Vincenzo leaned back slowly. Did you record it? Miguel's lips curved slightly. Every word. For a moment, the father's eyes softened, proud but cautious. Good, he said. Because when they whisper about us, we don't shout back. We show them. Thunder rolled outside again, echoing faintly through the walls, the same sound from that diner night. Miguel looked toward the window, the rain streaking the glass. What happens when they stop whispering and start listening? Vincenzo's gaze sharpened. Then, my son, the lesson begins. Miguel didn't know exactly what his father meant. Not yet. But as lightning lit the sky, one thing was clear. The world was about to learn who they had really messed with. Good evening, Principal Harris. This is Vincenzo Torino. The voice on the phone was calm. Too calm. It carried the weight of authority, the kind that made men straighten their posture without realizing it. On the other end of the line, the principal froze mid-sentence. Papers rustled. The faint hum of the school's office lights filled the silence. Mr. Torino, he stammered, forcing a smile into his tone. Of course. How can I? Vincenzo cut him off. My son was assaulted again. There was no shouting. No anger, just precision. Each word sharpened by restraint. The principal swallowed. I assure you, sir, You've been handling it for weeks, Vincenzo interrupted. Tell me, does humiliation count as part of the curriculum now? The principal hesitated, glancing through the glass at the empty hallways. I had no idea it was that serious. A pause. Then Vincenzo's voice dropped to a whisper. It's serious now. Outside, in the dark of his study, Vincenzo sat behind a mahogany desk. His cufflinks glinted under the low lamp, the golden lion emblem catching the light. On the table lay Miguel's phone, unlocked, playing a muted video of the cafeteria scene. Derek's laughter. The milk pouring. The silence afterward. Vincenzo didn't look away. He let it play again. And again. Each frame burned deeper into his mind. Across town, Principal Harris sat frozen at his desk, replaying the sound of that voice. Calm, controlled, dangerous. The next morning, the mood at school shifted. Teachers spoke in hushed tones. The security guard who usually napped by the doors was suddenly alert. A black car with tinted windows was parked across the street. Inside, Miguel walked quietly down the hallway. His bruises had faded, but the whispers hadn't. Yet something about him had changed. His posture, his pace, the way his eyes met the world now. Derek and his friends leaned near the lockers, pretending to joke but keeping one cautious eye on him. You think he told? One of them muttered. Derek scoffed. Told who? His imaginary Mafia dad? But when Miguel passed them without a word, without even flinching, Derek's grin faltered. That afternoon, the principal called Derek into his office. The boy slouched in the chair, bored. This about lunch? It was just a joke, sir. Harris rubbed his temple, exhaling. You have no idea what kind of joke you're in, son. He opened a folder. Inside, photos, timestamps, witness statements. Every incident documented with dates and videos. Miguel had built a case like a detective, not a kid. Derek blinked. What is this? Harris didn't answer. He slid his phone across the desk. On the screen, a message thread. At the top, Vincenzo Torino. And the last message read, We'll let the board see what your school defines as discipline. Derek's confidence cracked. Wait, that's his dad? His father, the principal said slowly, has more influence than this entire district combined. Across town again, in a quiet restaurant that smelled of espresso and power, Vincenzo sat with two men in tailored suits. One was a senator. The other, the city superintendent. They weren't friends. They were listeners. Vincenzo placed his phone on the table, the screen facing up. My son recorded everything. Your schools protect the privileged, not the victims. That ends tonight. The senator shifted uncomfortably. Vincenzo, you're not suggesting... I'm not suggesting anything, Vincenzo said, sipping his coffee. I'm promising transparency. He slid a flash drive across the table. Tomorrow morning, this footage reaches the press. Unless certain people take responsibility, the men exchanged looks. They knew that tone, the tone that didn't bluff. That evening, as the sun bled orange over the city, Miguel stood at his bedroom window watching cars pass. His phone buzzed. A message from his father, tomorrow you'll speak. Be honest, calm. The world listens better when you don't shout. Miguel took a deep breath, his reflection faint in the glass. What if they don't believe me? He whispered. Downstairs, Vincenzo's voice carried faintly through the open door. Then we'll make them. The next day, the auditorium lights blazed bright. Rows of students filled the seats. Teachers lined the walls. And at the front, a nervous principal adjusted his tie while Miguel set up the projector. Derek sat in the crowd, jaw tight, pretending to scroll his phone. Miguel's hands didn't shake as he connected the flash drive. The screen flickered to life, and the first frame appeared. The slap, the laughter, the milk, then silence. Every face turned toward Derek, and from the back of the room, a tall man in a black suit stepped inside. Quiet, composed, watching. Vincenzo Torino had arrived. "Say it again," Derek sneered, his voice cutting through the cafeteria noise. "Say you're sorry for touching my tray." Miguel didn't move. His eyes flicked between Derek and the three boys standing behind him, their phones already recording. He could feel every camera in that room, every laugh waiting to explode. "I didn't touch your food," Miguel said quietly. Derek leaned closer, his smirk curling like a blade. "But you did touch my table. Big difference, huh?" The crowd chuckled. Someone whispered, "It's happening again." Miguel's hands tightened on his backpack straps. He'd promised his father he wouldn't fight back, not this time. Just keep his head down, finish school, stay invisible. But Derek wasn't going to let him. Not after the cafeteria video had gone viral. Not after the rumors about Miguel's father started spreading. "Come on, little man," Derek said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "Tell us, is it true your daddy's some kind of gangster?" Laughter erupted. Phones went higher. Someone shouted, "Ask if he'll send his hitmen next." Miguel's jaw tensed. He wanted to walk away, but Derek stepped into his path. The cafeteria lights flickered above them, humming. "Don't walk," Derek whispered. "Run! Let's see if your Mafia daddy can save you this time." The cafeteria doors opened just then, and Principal Harris stepped in. The laughter scattered. Phones disappeared into pockets. Derek's grin faded, but his eyes stayed locked on Miguel. "Everything all right here?" the principal asked. "Yes, sir," Derek said instantly. "Just helping our new friend find a seat." Miguel said nothing. He just stared at the floor until the principal walked away. But when he looked up, Derek was still smirking. The kind of smirk that said this isn't over. Later that day, as the final bell rang, Miguel noticed something strange in his locker. A folded piece of paper tucked into his math book. No name. Just one line written in shaky handwriting. "He's setting you up." He looked around. No one nearby. Derek's friends were across the hall, whispering, laughing. But someone else was watching. A girl sitting quietly by the window. Emily. She looked away the moment Miguel's eyes met hers. That night, Miguel sat at his desk, replaying the cafeteria moment on his phone. Every sound, every face. Then he zoomed in on Derek's sleeve, a glint of something silver near his wrist. A bracelet with a tiny camera lens. His stomach dropped. They weren't just recording. They were staging. He replayed it again, slower this time. Just before Derek spoke, one of the boys in the back made a small hand signal toward the camera. Miguel froze the frame. His instincts screamed. They planned this. He opened a new message to his father, but stopped. If he told him, Vincenzo would show up, and that meant trouble. He had to handle this smart. Quietly. The next morning, whispers followed Miguel from the bus stop to the classroom. The same words looping through the hallways. Expelled, cheating, blackmail. By lunch, the rumors had grown teeth. "Did you hear?" someone said. They caught Miguel with answers to the midterm, printed from the teacher's email. Miguel froze mid-step. His stomach turned cold. "That's not true," he muttered. But when he opened his locker, the evidence was already there. A printed exam key stuffed in a plain envelope. His name written on it. "Nice work," Derek said from behind him, voice low. "Guess crime runs in the family." Before Miguel could answer, Principal Harris appeared. "Miguel, my office, now," the room spun. The walls closed in as he followed the principal through the hallway. Every face turned toward him, curious, judging, entertained. Inside the office, Harris dropped the envelope on his desk. "This was found in your locker. Do you have anything to say?" Miguel's lips parted, but no words came. He stared at the paper. The same school logo, the same format. But not his doing. He could feel Derek's fingerprints all over it. I didn't... Harris raised a hand. Save it. I've already called your father. Miguel's chest tightened. You what? He's on his way, Harris said, glancing toward the clock. I suggest you start thinking of an explanation. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant. 30 minutes later, the office door opened. And in walked Vincenzo Torino, crisp suit, calm eyes, silence that filled the room like smoke. He didn't look at the principal. Didn't speak. Just placed a small black folder on the desk and opened it. Inside, photographs, screenshots, timestamps. Before we discuss my son, Vincenzo said quietly, perhaps you should see what your other students have been doing. The principal blinked, confused. Vincenzo slid one photo forward. Derek and his friends in a classroom after hours, planting something in a locker. Miguel exhaled shakily. Relief. Shock. Vincenzo's voice stayed calm. My people handle security. Even school networks. I don't enjoy using that. But I do when someone tries to ruin my bloodline. The principal swallowed hard. Mr. Torino, Vincenzo leaned forward. You'll investigate, of course, thoroughly, or I will. The silence that followed was suffocating, the kind that crushed excuses. Miguel stared at his father, half afraid, half in awe. For the first time in days, Derek's name wasn't the loudest thing in his head. It was something else. Something colder. His father was done being silent. You want to know the truth? Derek shouted, his voice echoing through the packed auditorium. Fine, here it is. Your so-called innocent classmate Miguel Torino is a fraud. The microphone screeched, and 1,000 whispers rippled through the crowd. Teachers, students, parents, all frozen, eyes snapping toward the small figure standing near the side of the stage. Miguel's heart pounded so hard it drowned out the noise. He hadn't expected this. Not here, not now. Behind Derek, a massive projector flickered to life. The screen showed an image. Miguel's locker, the envelope, the printed exam answers. Gasps filled the room. Derek smirked into the mic. Caught red-handed. Guess crime really does run in the family, huh? Laughter burst from a few corners of the crowd. Someone whistled. Someone else muttered. Didn't his dad get arrested once? Miguel stepped forward, his voice trembling but steady. That's a lie. You planted that! Derek turned toward him, pretending to look shocked. Oh, so now I'm the criminal. He looked at the audience, shrugging dramatically. Classic move. Blame the honest guy when you're exposed. The auditorium lights felt too bright, too hot. Miguel's face burned under the stairs. Every phone camera was up again. He could see red dots from recording lights all across the seats. And in that moment, he froze, because on the back wall near the exit door his father was standing. Vincenzo Torino, calm, still, and watching. No words, no movement, just watching. Miguel's throat went dry. Derek kept talking, building the crowd's laughter like a conductor leading an orchestra. Hey, maybe we should thank him. I mean, who wouldn't want a little Mafia magic to boost their grades? The crowd roared. Miguel clenched his fists. Something in him broke. That fragile shell of fear he'd been living under. He stepped toward Derek, voice rising. You think this is funny? You ruined my name, my family's name, for views. Derek tilted his head. Nah, I ruined it because you don't belong here. Silence hit the room. The tension snapped. And then, a voice came through the speakers. But it wasn't Miguel's or Derek's. It was a recording. Yo, get it all on camera before the teacher comes. Miguel blinked. The words were unmistakable. Derek's voice. Make sure the envelope's clear in the shot. I want his face when he opens it. Gasps exploded through the audience. Derek froze, color draining from his face. The projector flickered again, this time showing a new video. It was Derek, his crew, after hours, laughing as they stuffed the envelope into Miguel's locker. Every detail caught perfectly. The audience went silent except for the faint hum of the speakers. Derek's mic slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. Miguel turned toward the back of the room again. His father was gone. Just the faint echo of his shoes as he exited through the double doors. Principal Harris stood up from the front row, his expression unreadable. "Who brought this video?" A girl's voice spoke softly from the corner of the stage. "I did." It was Emily. She walked forward, holding a small USB drive. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "Derek told me to record everything, but I couldn't let him destroy someone who never fought back." Students started murmuring. A teacher whispered, "Oh my God." Derek tried to speak, stammering, That video's fake." But it was too late. The projector froze on one last frame, Derek grinning at the camera, holding the exam sheet saying, "Let's see how the Mafia boy likes being framed." The crowd erupted. Not laughter this time, outrage. Phones turned, cameras pointed. But this time, not at Miguel, at Derek. Security officers moved in, and Derek's protests turned into white noise under the thunder of voices demanding justice. Miguel just stood there, numb, dazed but free. As the room buzzed with chaos, Emily came to his side. "He would have destroyed you," she whispered. Someone had to tell the truth. Miguel looked at her, voice barely audible. "You just saved my life." She smiled faintly. "No, I just gave them a reason to listen." The principal took the mic, trying to calm the storm. "Everyone, please, this assembly is over." But no one moved. Because in that moment, something far bigger than a school scandal was unfolding. The crowd had witnessed a shift, the fall of privilege, the rise of truth. As Miguel walked off the stage, the last thing he saw was the projector flickering one final time. The frozen image of Derek, exposed. And outside, through the auditorium doors, a black car waited at the curb. Vincenzo Torino sat inside, phone pressed to his ear. "Phase 1's complete," he said quietly. Then he hung up and smiled. The doors slammed open so hard, the sound echoed like thunder. Every head in the auditorium turned. Vincenzo Torino stepped inside, sharp black suit, dark sunglasses, and that calm, lethal silence that made the air feel heavier. He didn't need to shout. He didn't even need to move fast. His presence alone froze everyone in place. Derek's laughter died mid-sentence. The smug grin slipped from his face as his father, the principal, and half the teachers looked toward the man they all recognized, but none had ever dared to approach. Miguel just stood there, still breathing hard from everything that had just happened. His hands trembled, but his eyes locked on his father. "Dad," he whispered. Vincenzo's gaze softened just for a moment, the kind of softness that hides behind storms. Then it was gone. He turned toward the stage, his voice calm but razor-sharp. "Who touched my son?" No one answered. The silence was unbearable. Finally, Derek stammered, "Mr. Torino, I think there's been some misunderstanding." Vincenzo started walking down the aisle, each step slow, measured, echoing through the stunned crowd. "A misunderstanding?" His voice carried power, not loud, but deep enough to make every syllable feel like a warning. "That's a dangerous word to use, when your hands are dirty." Derek took a step back, glancing at the teachers, hoping someone would intervene. But no one did. The principal just sat frozen, lips pressed tight, like even breathing might set off an explosion. When Vincenzo reached the foot of the stage, he paused, eyes locked on Derek. "You think humiliating my family makes you powerful?" Derek's face turned pale. I didn't mean to," Vincenzo interrupted softly. "Then what did you mean, boy?" The word boy hit harder than a slap. The crowd could feel it. Every student who had ever been silent while watching cruelty unfold felt that sting in their chest. Miguel took a small step forward. "Dad, please!" Vincenzo's hand rose slightly. not to threaten, but to quiet him. No, son. Some lessons need to be taught in public, the same way they tried to humiliate you. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Derek looked around for help, but even his friends had slipped away from his side. Emily stood near Miguel, her eyes fixed on the man now standing under the stage lights. Vincenzo turned toward the audience. "Let me tell you something about power," he said, his voice calm and chilling. "Real power doesn't scream. It doesn't bully. It doesn't need to prove itself." He looked back at Derek. Real power remembers. Then, almost casually, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. He handed it to the principal. "That's every illegal act your son's been part of. The recordings, the payments, the fake test scores, even the little prank with the envelope." Gasps spread like wildfire. The principal unfolded the paper, his hands shaking. His face turned ashen as he read. "This can't be true." "It's true," Vincenzo said simply. "And it's already with the district board. I just came to make sure my son's name was cleared before they handle yours." Derek stumbled backward, mumbling, You don't have the right." Vincenzo's eyes narrowed slightly. "I don't need rights, Derek. I have proof." The crowd broke into murmurs. Phones came out again, recording everything. This time, it wasn't humiliation they were capturing. It was justice. Vincenzo turned toward Miguel. "You don't fight with your fists when they want to drag you down. You fight with truth. And when that's not enough, you make sure they can't speak lies anymore." For the first time, Miguel saw something new in his father's eyes. Not coldness, not control, but pride. Quiet, heavy pride. The principal stood up, his voice shaking. "Mr. Torino, please, let's discuss this privately." But Vincenzo's words cut through him like a blade. "You let them destroy a child's dignity in your school. You let your teachers look away. You don't deserve privacy." He turned to leave, but before stepping away, he stopped in front of Derek. "Apologize," he said softly. Derek's lips trembled. "What? Apologize to him?" "Right here. Right now." The silence felt endless. The audience leaned in. Derek looked like he wanted to vanish. Finally, he swallowed and whispered, "I'm sorry." Vincenzo tilted his head. Louder. "I said I'm sorry!" Derek shouted, voice breaking. Vincenzo nodded once. "Good. Now you know how small you sound when you're begging to be seen." He turned and started walking toward the doors. Miguel stood frozen, caught between shock and relief. As Vincenzo reached the exit, he looked over his shoulder. "Come on, son. You've already won. No need to stand in the ashes." Miguel followed him, still dazed. The moment they stepped into the hallway, the crowd erupted inside, a wave of disbelief, justice, and whispers that would echo through the school for years. Outside, the sunlight hit Miguel's face. For the first time, it didn't feel heavy. He looked at his father. "Why did you come?" Vincenzo smirked slightly. "Because I taught the world one rule, son. You can insult me all you want, but you never touch my blood." Then he opened the car door, and the two of them disappeared into the city traffic, leaving behind the wreckage of arrogance and the quiet birth of respect.